In the mid-19th century, people started traveling more. The reason was simple. If you had money, you could get to distant places faster. In the 1840s, steamships could take you to Europe in about 2 weeks, as opposed to sailing ships, which took about 4 to 6 weeks. By the 1850s, you could get from New York to Chicago in about 3 to 4 days by train, as opposed to as long as 6 weeks half a century earlier. So of course, more people traveled and more people wrote about traveling. The big question for lots of book and newspaper readers was traveling good for you? In his 1869 book, Innocents Abroad, the famous author Mark Twain said, yes, and I quote, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts." I would like to think that Mark Twain's comments about travel were always true. But consider the people who have explored the world and brought their own prejudices with them. Take, for example, Theodore Roosevelt. He traveled to the American West in 1884 to his ranch in the Dakotas. He interacted with lots of rough cowboys, but also with indigenous people. 2 years later, he declared that, quote, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of every 10 are, and I shouldn't like to inquire too closely into the case of the 10th. After his presidency, Roosevelt visited East Africa. He met lots of Africans of many backgrounds. When he returned to the United States, here's what he said, quote, "It is pleasant to be made to realize in vivid fashion the progress the American Negro has made by comparing him with the Negro who dwells in Africa untouched, or but lightly touched, by white influence." Here was a traveler who traveled with way too many preconceptions to allow new environments to change his mind about anything. On the other hand, and in contrast, Malcolm X's 1964 journey and pilgrimage to Mecca, the sacred holy site of Islam, did change his attitudes about race. As a leader of the Nation of Islam in the 1950s and 60s, Malcolm had adhered to the nation's position that white people were inherently evil. But when he traveled to Cairo, Egypt, and then Jeddah, the Saudi gateway to Mecca, he was stunned by what he saw. Malcolm X later wrote, "Throngs of people, obviously Muslims from everywhere, bound for the pilgrimage, were hugging and embracing. They were of all complexions. The whole atmosphere was of warmth and friendliness. The feeling hit me that there really wasn't any color problem here. The effect was as though I had just stepped out of a prison." He returned to the U.S. convinced, in Malcolm's own words, that, quote, "The white man is not inherently evil, but America's racist society influences him to act evilly." Clearly a change here, but this is not to say that Malcolm X returned to the United States with a more moderate position on America's race problem. He still thought it was up to Black America to stand up to white supremacy. In his own words, quote, "There can be no black-white unity until there is first some black unity." But if ever anyone confirmed Mark Twain's observations about travel, it was Malcolm X. Before I finish this video, it should be said that in the last years of his life, Theodore Roosevelt visited Navajo and Hopi reservations in Arizona. He found himself impressed by indigenous art, architecture, and technology. He even called for the protection of Native American cultures. And that suggests to me that traveling sometimes helps alleviate prejudice, as Mark Twain suggested, but only if you are already traveling with an open mind.